For centuries, humanity has asked the same question: what happens when we die? Science has often stayed silent, but neuroscience is beginning to reveal something extraordinary. Consciousness may continue beyond physical death, and this single idea has the power to change the way we view life, loss, and existence itself. For a long time, science has tried to explain consciousness purely as a byproduct of the brain, something that ceases the moment the body shuts down. Yet more and more evidence suggests that consciousness is not locked inside the skull, but rather something much larger, something that might not end when our heart stops beating. Neuroscientists have observed that after clinical death, there can still be patterns of brain activity. This suggests that awareness lingers even when the body has technically died. People who have been revived after cardiac arrest often report experiences of clarity, light, and connection. They recall conversations, details in the room, and sensations that go beyond the capacity of a brain deprived of oxygen. These are not isolated cases, but thousands of accounts collected from around the world, pointing toward the same mystery, that consciousness may not be extinguished by death. The question then arises: if consciousness is more than the brain, where does it go when the brain is no longer functioning? Some scientists propose that the brain is not the source of consciousness but a filter, a receiver, much like a radio channeling signals. When the radio is broken, the signal does not disappear. It simply continues in a form we cannot pick up. If our minds work in a similar way, then death may not end consciousness, but release it from the physical limits of the body. Quantum physics adds another layer to this mystery by showing us that energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. If thoughts, memories, and awareness are forms of energy, then it is possible that what we experience as the self is not lost but shifted into a different dimension of existence. Many individuals who have gone through near-death experiences describe encounters with loved ones who have already passed away. They report conversations, feelings of warmth, and an overwhelming sense that these presences were real. If consciousness ends at death, how do we explain such vivid interactions? Skeptics argue they are hallucinations, but the consistency across cultures, ages, and circumstances makes that explanation less convincing. In fact, advanced brain scans of people undergoing altered states of awareness show areas of heightened activity that do not match ordinary dreaming or imagination. These findings hint that there may be layers of awareness science has only begun to touch. When we step back and look at these threads, neuroscience, physics, and human experience, we begin to see a picture forming. Consciousness may be more fundamental than matter itself, not something produced by the brain, but something that exists before and beyond it. If this is true, then what we call death may not be the shutting down of awareness, but simply the moment when awareness moves into another state of being. This possibility changes everything about how we understand the journey of life, the nature of connection, and the reality of what comes after. The brain acts as both transmitter and receiver of energy, and this idea reshapes how we understand human thought, memory, and even the possibility of communication beyond the physical world. For most of modern science, the brain has been treated as a closed machine, generating consciousness solely from chemical and electrical reactions inside neurons. But research has begun to reveal a deeper picture, one in which the brain is not only creating signals but also tuning into them, filtering, amplifying, and transmitting energy that may come from beyond the body itself. Imagine how a radio works. It doesn't create the music. It simply receives and transmits frequencies already in the air. Many neuroscientists and physicists believe the brain may operate in a similar way, drawing on fields of energy and consciousness that exist independently of the physical organ. Brainwave studies show that human thought patterns can synchronize with external rhythms, such as light, sound, and even the electromagnetic fields of the Earth itself. This synchronization suggests that the brain is not self-contained but deeply connected to an environment of invisible forces. For example, when people meditate or enter altered states of awareness, brain scans reveal shifts into frequencies that seem to open access to experiences beyond normal perception. Some individuals report visions, telepathic impressions, or feelings of being in touch with loved ones who are not physically present. If the brain were only producing consciousness, these experiences would be dismissed as illusions, but the repeatability and shared patterns hint at a deeper explanation. The brain could be acting as a receiver for signals of consciousness that extend beyond time and space. Consider the role of memory and imagination. When people recall events vividly, their brains light up in ways that mirror actual lived experience. But sometimes memories surface that have no direct origin in personal life, such as ancestral knowledge or unexplainable flashes of understanding. These moments support the theory that consciousness may be a shared field, and the brain is simply tuning into parts of it, much like switching between channels on a radio. Energy fields are everywhere, carrying information, and if the brain functions as both sender and receiver, then communication after death may not only be possible but natural. The energy of a person's consciousness could remain present, transmitting signals that sensitive brains can detect. Experiments with heart-brain coherence show that emotional energy also extends outside the body, measurable in magnetic fields detectable by scientific instruments. This means that what we feel and think is not confined but radiates outward, interacting with others in ways we cannot always see. If energy radiates while we live, it may continue radiating after the body ceases, and the brain of someone alive could receive and interpret that energy. This explains why so many people claim to feel the presence of someone after they have passed, not as imagination, but as a real energetic transmission. The transmitter-receiver model also helps us understand why altered states, near-death experiences, and deep spiritual practices often lead to powerful encounters with realities beyond the physical. The brain, freed from ordinary filters, may tune into frequencies of existence that are normally hidden. This means consciousness is not isolated, not a flicker of neurons destined to go dark, but an active field of energy flowing through a biological receiver. Near-death experiences provide scientific clues of post-death awareness, and they have become one of the most compelling pieces of evidence suggesting that consciousness is not confined to the physical body. Across cultures, religions, and time periods, people who have been clinically dead and then revived often report strikingly similar experiences. They describe floating above their bodies, observing medical staff working on them, hearing conversations that were later verified, and moving through tunnels of light or encountering beings of immense presence and compassion. These accounts are not random hallucinations. They follow patterns that point toward a consistent phenomenon. If death truly ended awareness, how could so many people describe events and details that occurred while their brains were no longer functioning? Modern neuroscience has studied near-death experiences with increasing seriousness. Patients who suffer cardiac arrest typically lose brain activity within seconds, and within minutes, measurable activity flatlines. Yet survivors often report vivid experiences during this window of brain inactivity. Some describe leaving their physical body entirely and entering a state of expanded consciousness where time and space no longer exist. The accuracy of their observations is often confirmed later by doctors and family members who were present. For instance, individuals have described tools used during resuscitation, colors of clothing, and even conversations that took place while they were clinically dead. These verifiable reports suggest that awareness continues independently of the brain, at least for some period of time. There is also a psychological dimension that cannot be ignored. Many people who undergo near-death experiences return transformed. They often lose their fear of death, develop a deeper sense of empathy, and shift their values away from material pursuits toward love, service, and connection. If these were simply hallucinations triggered by dying neurons, why would they produce such profound and lasting life changes? Neuroscience has shown that hallucinations typically cause confusion or disorientation, not clarity and transformation. The difference in impact strongly suggests that near-death experiences involve access to a higher or deeper level of consciousness rather than random brain activity. Studies using advanced imaging have also revealed unusual patterns during near-death states. Some research shows a brief surge of organized brain activity just as the body is shutting down, almost like the brain is opening a gateway to another dimension of awareness before ceasing function. This surge does not fit with what we know about oxygen deprivation or drug effects. It appears to be a purposeful transition rather than a chaotic collapse. Combined with the reports of individuals who see deceased loved ones or encounter entities of light, the evidence builds a strong case that what happens near death offers a glimpse into what may come after it. Near-death experiences challenge the traditional view that consciousness is entirely generated by the brain. Instead, they suggest the brain might serve as an interface or temporary vessel for something much larger. When the vessel fails, the consciousness it held does not vanish but continues in another form, one that still perceives, remembers, and even communicates. Communication with loved ones after death may be more than imagination, and this idea has been supported not only by centuries of human belief, but also by modern psychological and neurological observations. Many people report sensing the presence of someone they deeply loved after that person has passed away. These moments can take the form of hearing a familiar voice, smelling a scent tied to memories, dreaming so vividly that the experience feels more real than waking life, or even feeling a gentle touch when no one is physically present. While skeptics often dismiss these encounters as products of grief, stress, or the brain's attempt to cope with loss, the sheer number and consistency of these experiences suggests something more meaningful is happening. Millions of people across different cultures, religions, and eras describe nearly identical patterns of post-death communication, which points to a universal human experience rather than isolated imagination. Scientific studies into bereavement visions reveal that a surprisingly large percentage of widows, widowers, and grieving parents report clear encounters with their departed loved ones. These encounters often occur spontaneously and leave behind a deep sense of comfort, peace, and assurance that the person they lost continues to exist in some form. Neurologists studying brain function argue that if these were hallucinations caused by stress, they would vary widely in content, intensity, and emotional effect. Instead, what is found is the opposite, a striking uniformity in how people describe these contacts, often with vivid detail and a consistency that imagination alone cannot explain. Some even claim to receive knowledge they did not previously have, such as the location of a missing object or the sudden intuition about an unresolved issue, which later proves accurate. Electromagnetic field studies provide another layer of insight. The human body generates measurable fields of energy, particularly from the brain and the heart. If consciousness is indeed energy, then death may not destroy it, but only alter its form. Loved ones who have passed might still radiate subtle fields that sensitive individuals can perceive. Many cultures believe that during dreams or states of deep stillness, the boundary between the physical and non-physical world becomes thinner, allowing messages or signals from departed loved ones to reach us. These experiences are often so vivid that they defy the characteristics of normal dreaming, leaving the individual convinced of their authenticity. There are also countless stories of children who are too young to be influenced by complex beliefs about death, describing interactions with grandparents or siblings who have passed away. Children recall details they could not have known or speak of conversations with clarity that is beyond their years. Such cases are difficult to dismiss as imagination or cultural conditioning, and add weight to the possibility that communication continues beyond the grave. Ultimately, the persistence of these encounters across history, cultures, and individuals suggests that love creates bonds that survive death. If the brain acts as a receiver, it is possible that the energy of those who have passed continues to send signals, and those who are open and attuned can receive them as real communication. Evidence suggests death is a transformation, not an ending, and this understanding shifts the way we think about both life and what comes after it. For centuries, death has been viewed as a final cut, the ultimate silence where everything ceases, but science and human experience together paint a more complex picture. In biology, nothing truly disappears, Energy changes form, matter cycles, and systems transform into something new. The human body itself is proof of this principle. When life ends, the physical body returns to the earth, its elements feeding soil, plants, and eventually other beings. If this transformation occurs on the physical level, then it is reasonable to consider that consciousness, the essence of awareness, undergoes a similar process. Near-death experiences, communication with loved ones after death, and the measurable continuation of brain activity after the heart stops all point toward a reality where consciousness is not extinguished but moves into another state. In quantum physics, energy cannot be destroyed, it can only shift into different expressions. Consciousness, if understood as a form of energy or information, would therefore follow the same rule. This makes death less of an end and more of a transition, a passage into a different mode of being. Just as water evaporates into vapor yet remains part of the cycle, human consciousness may move into another dimension that we cannot fully perceive with ordinary senses. Many traditions across the world have long believed in transformation after death, whether described as the soul entering another realm, rebirth, or ascension to higher states of awareness. What is fascinating is that modern research is beginning to echo these ancient beliefs with evidence that suggests consciousness outlives the body. For example, individuals revived after clinical death often describe a sense of expansion, as if their identity stretched beyond the body and time itself. They report clarity, peace, and sometimes encounters with beings of light or loved ones who had already passed on. These consistent patterns across cultures suggest that what they experienced was not illusion, but a glimpse into the transformative nature of death. There are also accounts of heightened awareness during moments of passing. Families sitting with loved ones at the end often describe a visible shift, a sense that the person who was once confined by illness suddenly radiates calm, sometimes even joy, as if they are already stepping into a different existence. These moments often leave a profound impact, convincing those present that death is not destruction but transition. When combined with evidence from neuroscience and physics, these testimonies reinforce the idea that consciousness is part of a greater field that continues beyond physical boundaries. The brain may act as a temporary vessel, and once it shuts down, the consciousness it held is released, continuing on in another form. If death is transformation rather than an ending, then the fear of finality begins to dissolve. It opens the possibility that relationships, awareness, and love do not disappear, but shift into a different state of existence.